All right. Michelle.
I thought I had something. I remember a different thing, which was the templating stuff folks have been talking about.
By that,
I think
to clarify, you mean the static site generator,
static
like
site.
Pelican versus Next and stuff that Quinn has been talking about.
I believe React makes static sites, in case that was in question. I wasn't sure of all the, if we can think of like specific requirements I can understand and write down, I may be able to ask around for other advice, but also if we just want to settle on one of the given options, that's fine.
You're doing a static site for
it.
Court Forms Online? What are you doing?
Yeah, it is already a static site, but it's just not like on a official framework. So we're just going to replace it with one that's more people might be familiar with, basically. Make it a little easier to edit, in theory.
As opposed to something I cobbled together in the middle of the pandemic late at night one day.
Oh, yeah. So, but the thing is, weren't you going to try and do the headless thing with Court Forms Online? Change your mind.
Well, this doesn't prevent us from doing a headless CMS. It's a different part of the stack, basically. But what we realized is that would be a great place to store like descriptions of forms. And we decided instead we're going to, I'll talk about it in my update too. I don't want to take over.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Because that is basically what I've been working on this week.
I see.
We're going to get it from a DocAssembly server index page. So the server will tell us what forms it has. We'll use that to build the web page dynamically.
Awesome.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
not dynamically like every time you visit the page, but every time we regenerate it, which maybe we'll schedule to run once a night or something. So we pull in new forms from places.
Yes. I think that Next.js solves this, but I think that just React by itself, it creates a static site, but because it's a one-page app, it doesn't deal well with SEO. So like, might be worth just double checking that that's not going to be a problem if that's something you're prioritizing.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think we're going to try to do a single page app, but it seems to be working pretty well to use Next.js so far. I'll talk about it more in my update, I guess. But,
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not that there's a lot. I don't mean to be so mysterious, but.
But it's your turn, Michelle.
I'll wait with bated breath. That's right.
It's her turn if she wants to ask questions. I mean, that's another.
That's fair.
Another perspective on it. Well, I can let you give the whole story instead of asking everything blind. I'm okay with that. Other than that, just trying to keep up with like, I know it's just stuff that like whatever happens to come up at the time, that's better than nothing. So like, you know, still open to shout outs, and I think I can still handle some of those. So yeah. That's it for me, I think.
Okay. Really?
Well, I'm trying not to be distracted by the fact that working from home, I can't work on my DocAssembly dev server, the courts thing, trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And so Vito finally said, Mom, you spent 2 weeks on this. Just get a VPN. Don't worry about it. So I'm going to try that this weekend. There must be, the dev server must be set up differently from the live server. That's all I can think. And there must be some sort of blacklisted something or other. It's kind of driving me crazy, but because I can't get into it. And I couldn't see anything specifically in my own development server where like a blacklist for IP addresses or something. I don't know. I'd like to know why it's happening, but maybe I should stop spending time trying to figure that out, because it's actually working from home, which has nothing to do with getting my work done, really. And then I went back to an interview, the first interview that Michelle, you helped me do, the solve the nested ifs, and it turns out sometimes I think I've done something, it disappears. So it looks like I hadn't commented out. So I had 2 code blocks with the complicated if statements and the, what do you call, I don't know how we talk about breaking those separate if statements up. So I'm trying to figure that out. And then I'm realizing there's all kinds of logic I didn't put. Anyway, it's kind of I thought it was done, and I'm going back and looking at it and going, this is not great. So that's where I am, being a little bit frustrated, but I think that's what happens when you leave something for a month and you come back to it and you see stuff that you did, it's like fresh look at stuff. But that's where I am. And I heard rave reviews about your presentation, David, at the Academy of Arts and Sciences about AI. Did you do a presentation on that with a video?
Yeah, a while ago, I think.
Oh,
There was one this week.
That wasn't me.
Margaret Hagan and Jason Barnwell presented in.
oh,
And Dean Perlman was presenting in it too.
all right. So I guess Bonnie must have seen Bonnie Huff. I was talking to Bonnie Huff yesterday. And because Matt, the SRLN thing kind of went down the tube. So we're going to be co-chairs of the forms and tech thing, and that kind of dissipated. And then they revived it. They've asked Bonnie to do it. And Matt just felt like he was too busy and he wasn't really crazy about the lack of follow-up when we said we would do it. So we were going through interesting things to talk to the Self-Represented Litigants Network about it. So AI was something that, would be, I think, interesting to people because it's so controversial about the good and the bad and what we were talking about last week. So
Working on a presentation about that all right now. But it wasn't me. Although this may be the first time, very often our work gets mistaken for Stanford's work because of the S. I think this might be the first time that Stanford's work was mistaken for Suffolk. So this is
or did Dean?
There's a lot of
Perlman
mention
talk
of
about it?
Suffolk because
Yeah.
our name came up a lot, and Dean Perlman was moderating. So
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
probably-
maybe that's what it was. Yeah, maybe that's what it
good
was.
Suffolk, soft Suffolk.
Yeah. Because she mentioned Margaret Hagan separately, not as part of Suffolk. So maybe that's what it was.
Dean Perlman's moderator.
Yeah. Anyway, that's me slowly trying to get back into the game.
All right. Well, all right, cool. Quentin.
All right. So
Reveal.
no, it's not a really big reveal. The big reveal is we were trying out some different frameworks for static site generation. And Michelle, you're right. It's kind of funny. We ended up at a site or a site generator that's kind of centered around React because our starting point was let's do something that's a short walk away from what we know, which is Python, but static. And I tried something called Pelican, but it seemed to be a little bit of effort to try to get it to fit what we're trying to do. And I ended up at Next.js. So it seems to be working pretty well. And let me see. I could show you what I'm working on, I guess. Let me figure out what this is. So I just made a couple pages, and it's not really nothing is styled yet. That's what I'm just starting to work on now.
So a static site is one. I mean, if you say you're generating it, that means it's not new every time, right? I mean, you generate it once and it stays. So it's not pulling content until you regenerate it. That's how it's different. Because in the old days, a static site was, like.
It was all static.
It's the same. It's like what we used to do with FTPing files all over the place, Caroline. It's just now it's generated by code.
I see. Right. So so the end result. Oh, here we go. Yeah.
So this is what was working. This is like pulling from
a
list of pages, and you see like the start button. Maybe you can't really see that, but this is mixed with two servers, Suffolk server and GBLS's server.
Oh,
so those links work. So that's, that was the first thing to figure out if I could do that. And then I'm just working on these cards now to direct you to the pages. I think I'm probably going to make one page per interview,
Mhm.
unless people have a strong
I like
preference
that.
against it. I feel like that will be more flexible for the long run for us.
Well, it's more helpful for people too, because then
Yeah.
you can give them enough information.
Right. There's enough space to give people more context. And I'm thinking like basically we'd show the main form prominently on the screen, maybe a list of related forms.
Mhm.
And
Description.
that could be a good place to put things like PDFs that we don't really want to make too prominent, but are still maybe relevant.
Are you saying the
Pages.
PDF of the form, I mean, you'd have both the interview and this is the form that you're gonna be filling? Is that what you're thinking? Or are you thinking of other relevant PDFs?
Other relevant PDFs is what I was thinking,
Oh, I see. Mhm.
but maybe showing the original PDFs is a good idea too. Trick is,
And I
in
guess
link there.
the other thing is your description / introduction is before you start. I don't know if you'd want to do that, but on that, if you're gonna have what they call those they used to call them jump pages, right? So you'd sort of give people, don't even start the form unless you have, until you have such and such, or you'll need these things before you start. I think those are the kinds of things you want to put on jump page.
Yeah, we came up with a good list. I'll even pull it up actually. It's not a bad idea. This was actually mostly after you'd left the call on Monday, Michelle, but maybe it's good to talk about it on this call too, or could do it on Monday. It depends on how much, Bryce, if I'm taken away from your time to talk about stuff you want to do. Then. All right. So right now, there's not a lot of information about every interview inside the DocAssembly server, but we were thinking, when we were trying to think about where do we add the description of the page, we don't really like keeping it in Google Docs where it is right now.
Mhm.
And we do need to keep some information in the DocAssembly server already. So it kind of just makes sense to put all of the information in the DocAssembly server. This is what we came up with. Description, the original form name, and the URL to the form, what forms it will produce. We basically figured like there's some unstructured and really inconsistent information right now in court forms online, right? Like if we go to domestic violence, it's a really detailed list of things. Some of the forms don't say what the form that's being produced is at all,
Mhm.
or maybe it's implied by the context
For
of
the
it.
title, yeah.
You know, these ones are not the best example of not showing the name of the forms, but some of them don't really say all the forms.
Mhm.
So we could put all of that like in a template and say, okay, put this in your DocAssembly interview in the metadata tag, and then it will be updated every time you update the interview. That's kind of what we were thinking made sense.
That's what you mean when you're saying you keep it on the DocAssembly server, you keep it contained within the interview in the metadata.
Exactly. And some things maybe wouldn't be like, but maybe this too. So we've been talking about this idea of like our simple forms that are kind of just a little better than PDF. So maybe indicating that somehow in the metadata. There's a bunch of forms. Like if we go to interviews.gbls.org list, there's some forms that are linked here in the metadata that are really meant for just GBLS's internal use.
Mhm.
I mean, and they're behind a login, so but we might want to figure out a way to say this is a public interview that you can use and not have that be the default for every interview on a web server. So it would just like you choose whether you want to publish it or not. So you can keep your private ones there still. That's pretty much it. But if anything comes to mind as like being really important to put on that page, I think we had a lot of the things you just mentioned, Caroline, but
Mhm.
update date is one thing.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to get we could do that dynamically, I guess. We could pull GitHub and get the date every interview was last modified on GitHub. Or we could get the version of the package from DocAssembly. And in the past, I've tried to store the update date in the metadata of the interview, but it is not actually a good way to do it, because then it's like another place to be out of sync.
Yeah, +1 for not having the metadata. I was gonna say, if we move towards like the version of the package on the server, I think that's a big plus, specifically because that's one of the things that is like, it's slightly misleading for like a lot of our production stuff, like that may have not, like we updated it a few weeks ago, but like before that we hadn't updated it in a few months, even though we were like actively working on a few interviews. And so it'd be like, oh, this was the about page would say like, this was updated like a few days ago when the version that they're actually running hadn't been. So.
Yeah, and I don't know a way around that is easy to execute.
I mean, if we get the version, then
we could display the version, but that's not necessarily meaningful to people who are visiting the page, right? Compared to the update.
In terms of the date, because the version, unless developers are using dates for versions, and also they just, I mean, you can look at a series of numbers with dots between, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a date, right? So we look at versions all the time, we don't recognize those as dates.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends both on the developer and, I mean, it would be nice for people to see how recent it is, because of course you're not actually, your interviews are not integrated with forms that are on court websites. Or I mean, do you know what I mean? They're the latest version that we pulled, but if the court goes and updates its form, our interview is not automatically going to be updated.
Yeah.
What is that? I mean, I don't know this. I guess it is something that you'd have to maintain, but and again, I don't know how widespread it is. A lot of court forms will have the date of the form, you know, well, at least in Massachusetts, they have the date that it was last updated in the lower left-hand corner. Whether that would be, I mean, that isn't the version of the interview, that's the version of the form, but that's the one you're working on. So I don't know.
Well, what we can get with the GitHub API is we can get the date that the repository was last modified.
The main one that the production would have pulled, right?
There are a few other things we could also do, though. It's like extra, I agree it's extra steps, and it's probably not a thing we want to try to switch to immediately. But if we have the version number and we're using PyPy, then we can get like the date and time that version was uploaded to PyPy. Like that's a thing that's shown in like the PyPy UI of like, oh, this was like this version was published X 5 months ago or something, and we can get a date from that. That has to be like the date itself behind the scenes. Unfortunately, I'm looking to like the GitHub API, and it doesn't look like we can do the same for tags, which is what I would be nice to do if it wasn't PyPy.
My question is, one, can we get the Git data from the package that's installed? And two,
So
could we get the commit SHA? Like if
you
not,
can't get the
rest of the.
You can't get the commit SHA for I've been trying to get the commit SHA for forever, because knowing the exact like SHA would be so much better than like, oh, is it like 1.1? I don't remember. I forgot to update the version. Let me bump the version and reinstall just so we can be sure it's running on the latest version. Like that's a problem I run into all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the way that pip installs things directly from GitHub, it doesn't save the SHA, and it doesn't save like the Git information for us to look around in.
Can you say anything about the date that it was updated from pip's log? The date it was installed.
Pips, oh, I don't think it saves that much info, but that's not a bad question.
Oh, well, there's a function. Okay, it looks like yes, there's a pip date package.
That's for the date it was installed in production.
I mean, so I'm just trying to think, like, could we change DocAssembly in some way to get the information we need. That would basically mean storing it, modifying the table and storing it somewhere there. But if we just say, hey, install pip date and use that to list when things were installed with pip, something. We'll say when it was installed. It's not necessarily when it was last updated. So all these things that are kind of like what people want to know, which is like, is this interview regularly maintained? And we have so many pieces of information that are already created automatically and that are reliable, that are almost but not quite that information that they want.
Yeah.
It just seems really problematic to manually update that somewhere in a table because it's just going to be wrong so often.
I really agree that we should avoid doing the manual updates. I do think that the thing that people would want is like the version of the interview I'm running. When was the last time someone updated that? Like that is what someone wants. It's just really hard to get. And all the other easier things to get are close, but not quite. But I do think that's like the one thing that if we could get it, it would be the one piece of information we want and we could just use it. So that's just my take, but.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, given with that framework, maybe this pip date would work because it's at least when it was installed, you can see when people are updating the package on the server.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like
And
last
even if we,
install
I don't even think we wouldn't need this particular package, but just the idea that we could just run, hey, when was this file modified on the file system? Like we can do that without that pip date probably.
Oh yeah, looks like you're right. Looks like all it does is it just looks at the directory and sees when it was modified.
Yeah.
And this is like a way to show just like statistical information about it, I guess. All right.
I was confused at first because I thought whenever I looked at it, I was like, oh, this looks like it. Or it's like, I thought you had mentioned it was like a pip command.
Well, it sounds like it could be, right? But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the output of it is just checking the file path and seeing what data was modified. We can do that ourselves and we don't want to use their output.
Yeah, I guess if it has to be Python, we could use it. For some reason, I was thinking this would not be a Python thing. It's got it. So
it is a Python thing, but it seems like it's meant to just output to the console.
Oh, really? Okay, then yeah, we just do it.
Yeah, I mean, this seems we could look at it and see how it does it. Well, and actually we couldn't because it's GPL.
Oh, never mind. Okay.
But it describes what it does, which is just to check the date stat on the.
Yeah, we could use that for sure.
All right. So that would tell people this package was installed on this date. Yeah, that feels pretty useful. And then do people also want to see anything about the GitHub?
I don't know if you want to say it was installed. Because people, that's not what people want to know.
We
They
could,
want a recent, I mean, if installed doesn't mean it's recent, right? I mean,
But that is literally what we are getting the info, the piece of
I know that's
information
the
that we're getting.
that's the thing about having it be close, but not what people want. I mean, why give them some, it's not what they want, right? That's again another.
Well, there are situations in which it's what they want, but if someone hasn't updated something in a really long time, then it is the situation, right? Because it'll show as having updated, despite it having actually been updated long ago.
Yeah, I would, compared to what we're currently doing on the about page where we show the GitHub modification time, like it's still not exactly what they want, but it's like it would if like, and it's gonna lean towards like much older dates. Actually, no, it wouldn't. No, it still doesn't.
Maybe we show the oldest of those two dates. So if the package hasn't been installed since the most recent version on GitHub, it's the older of the two dates. But if
I like that idea. Yeah.
If it's been installed after the GitHub modify date, we assume it's the GitHub modify date. because it's not really
Yeah.
relevant to say, oh, you just installed it yesterday, but it actually hasn't changed on GitHub for 2 years.
Mhm,
I like that idea, actually.
mhm.
That is the main thing we want it to be like a little bit older. So like, oh, pleasantly surprised that it's actually a slightly newer version than like I'm currently running, as opposed to like, oh, I thought this thing was updated yesterday, but it's still running.
So what's the
Minutes.
problem with the GitHub? What's the problem with the GitHub latest commit date? I mean, you can't get it or what?
No.
We just
the-
don't usually install packages on the production server right after we've updated them in GitHub. So it would tell people it's newer than actually what the code they're running is.
It is more of an issue
Oh, is that
for,
because you call it from PyPy to put it on the
No, we just don't install it right away after
Because
we
they haven't gone
change.
to the package management page and hit update, right? They haven't done that yet on the production server. It was just on the dev server because we were trying it out, seeing that it was working.
so on the dev server, it'll be the version will be recent. On the production server, it'll be old. But that's what it is. Isn't that what it is? That's why I'm confused.
There's a
It's not gonna
situation,
pull a
if
new
they haven't
date, is
installed
it?
it on the server yet, the GitHub date will be more recent than the thing that's actually on the server.
How
it's
will
more-
how will it know that? Oh, because you do it separately. You
both
don't do it as
dates.
part of the interview. It's a separate. thing.
yes.
Ah, okay. I couldn't understand that. I was thinking, well, if you, okay, I get it. So that's why you want it to be part of the interview so that you know, that's the version idea. Hmm.
Yeah, I think so. I think this will work. I think that should do it. And what it is telling me right away is we're going to want to have that come from our endpoint on the server that lists the available packages and publishes them in the right way for our Court Forms Online website to use it. Because this is not information that's in the list endpoint right now. I mean, I guess it could be. We could try to modify DocAssembly to add it. But it kind of means maybe we're going to want to start out right away by using our own endpoint. And we say install this if you want to publish your interviews.
Mhm.
Any thoughts there? I can move some of this discussion to Monday, but that's a really technical detail, I guess.
And those dates would appear on the jump pages? Where would those dates?
I mean, we're trying to say like, yeah, this is information we're going to use in some way.
Mhm.
So it should be relevant to that page. Yeah.
And you wouldn't have it in the interview.
It wouldn't be part of,
It'd be
it
the
could be in
about
the interview too.
page.
It is something we're showing on the about page now, but
Yeah.
maybe we'll improve it to be a better and more descriptive
Mhm.
thing with the same change. But it would not be possible to put that in the metadata
Right.
of the interview because that's calculated statically. It's not dynamic.
Yeah, so you put it, you're right, gotcha, yeah.
You can't put variables in the metadata.
Mhm.
That's what I was trying to say. It's in
Yeah.
a funny way, but yeah. Any thoughts, Bryce? Are you thinking? No thoughts. We should wait till Monday.
I don't feel like I have anything to say on it specifically.
Yeah. Okay.
Percolate over the weekend.
There's no rush for that. I mean, we'll show what we can show to start, and then just build out from there. And I
Yeah,
was
really.
thinking-
Caroline was, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I am realizing I was a bit distracted because I was looking at it. And I think the current thing we're doing, which is slightly worse, is that anytime any code is pushed to get the GitHub repo, it updates the date that we're looking at. So it's not even like, oh, I have finished and I've done main. It's like for example, we haven't updated our motion to stay eviction in a while. But I've been doing a ton of work making it ready to be e-filing. I'm pretty sure that if someone went to the about page on that, it would be like, oh, updated last week because I made a small change to it while we're still waiting for e-filing. But like that interview hasn't been updated for such a long time. So that's another slight reason I'm just trying. I would like to. Older is better. That's all I think. But yeah.
And that particular, it's the appeals court motion to stay eviction.
Yes. Yeah.
we're still using the mass access version of that. So there's no about page.
Okay, that's
There's a lot of things.
slightly better, but
It's been updated like 2 or 3 years ago, I guess.
Ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. Especially if it's going to send a bunch of emails to people potentially. Yeah, I guess that's it. I mean, I'm trying a couple of things. I don't know if these are the right choices or not. It turned out to be kind of a pain to get Bootstrap to work with Next.js, but I figured it out. It's like a couple of lines that were not really documented because they just had a major version change for Next.js. And that means I can't ask ChatGPT questions about it. It's too new. But so I was thinking I'm going to move the styles to Bootstrap because we're already using Bootstrap in a bunch of places and it still seems to be maintained well. And I'd rather have just one front-end framework to learn.
So do we also want
Makes
to
sense to
move,
people.
do we also want to make sure our theme, like, not our theme, but like our organization styles are included in that?
Not sure what you mean.
Along with the Bootstrap?
you mean
Like we
the
have our
actual
own customizations.
the own CSS in mass access, like Docassembly mass
Yeah.
access has our own CSS. Do we want to make sure that it's directly shared? I feel like we're okay with copying that back and forth. I don't really want to put a dependency from one thing to the other.
Oh, I see your question. Okay. Like, is that another way to simplify stuff to have one set of styles?
Yes. Am I expressing? Am I sort of repeating that correctly, Michelle, for what you were trying to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. It doesn't have to be from. It doesn't have to be from one source, though. I think that could be nice, but I mean, we'd have to do a bunch of work for that. So, but just as long as we have kind of some of the main, you know, like every now and then update to whatever new styles we implement.
Sure.
I think they're distinct enough because the front page web page is a little bit different, but I see your point. I mean, I guess it's nice if they're consistent.
For example,
Same.
if we get rid of border radiuses, then whatever, do you know what I mean? Like or whatever, like then they would match.
I can try to make them more consistent. Actually, I'm already noticing some things that there's no real reason why they're different. You know, like I'll show.
I'm just saying, instead of doing it piecemeal, if we just use the same CSS code.
But they're for really different styles, right? Like there's all the DocAssembly specific stuff that we're customizing.
Yeah, but it
So-
won't affect the other one. It just won't do anything. And the ones that are more broad, it will.
What are we even? So we're changing the nav bar. That's going to be a totally different element because it's like DocAssembly specific thing.
Okay.
But if we're using fonts or button radiuses, that makes sense. But are we customizing those? I think those are all the stock.
I'm just saying, instead of questioning every little thing, that's what I was trying to avoid, is questioning every little thing.
Well, I
Right.
think
We'll
I think
just
Quinn is saying
copy-paste.
we can't copy paste everything unless we copy paste like all of DocAssembly's theme and all of the CSS that DocAssembly is using, not just the stuff in mass access.
Right.
Okay.
And I think that, yeah, I'd agree
All right,
that.
I see a, yeah, I see some,
It's really a
all right.
small list of things. It's just this actually.
okay,
So I don't think we customized. We didn't generate a new theme that I can see. There's
Okay.
not one here. We just, which I think I will do for the new site. It's a good goal to try to sync them up, I guess, but yeah. I mean, if we're using Bootstrap, it's easier, obviously. But the other thing is like, I could try using some other framework or just copy over all the styles, but it feels like we can change. We're going to change some stuff. I'm going to try to make it look the same because I don't think there's anything really wrong with our style. But we're going to get rid of this big block.
okay.
Not necessarily get rid of it. We're going to change the language, I guess.
Okay.
I'm gonna use all of the top level categories from taxonomy.legal instead of just a few.
Okay.
I think we probably have to change some of this, right?
Yeah,
What's we have to get rid of this, right?
And you'll remember that Andy,
We need a more prominent suffix logo.
because the partners are no longer as closely involved as they were at the time of the creation.
Yeah, so there's not really a reason to make them more prominent than they really are. So it should probably be here.
I don't think it has to be there. It just should not.
Maybe sort of about the project.
Because that's where people normally put them, you just don't have to have everybody else there.
We could keep these names like, hey, past contributors, and just make it clear who is the owner of the project.
I think that could even go in, like, right now we have like the about, like where there are all those, like not that about, but like there's an about page.
When to learn more, if you
Right.
go to learn more, then you
Like
can
the
put
about
there.
us.
So maybe put those icons here and not on the front
Thank
page.
you there on the main page, because we haven't interacted with. I mean, we used to have weekly calls with all those people, or they were doing active stuff or they're sending stuff over. But
Right.
now, we just wanted to reflect what the actual, actual contributions. So we can say
That
thank
makes
you
sense.
for your support starting, and then an example of one where so Find My Site now has the Suffolk University logo in a way that
Yeah, let's see if I can look at that one. Just there in the footer. Okay, that makes sense.
that's also the only place where the lit logo is too. So it's right with the lit logo.
It does feel like we need a navigation bar and an icon makes sense there. And there's no Court Forms Online logo. But-
I'm just saying it doesn't have to be. But I guess it is nice to have the lit logo up there. So you know what you could do? You could have the lit logo up there and just the Suffolk University logo in the footer.
And there's no more, I mean, we're not really trying to say mass access is a thing anymore, right? Just maybe make this Court Forms Online, get rid of mass access.
I think that's right. Our branding guide, for just to be clear, when we have the logo, we're supposed to have the Suffolk University name on the same page.
Because it doesn't have to be on the same line though.
It doesn't have to be on the same.
Okay, so try to mirror the Find My Site placement of the Suffolk University logo. Keep Lit Lab in the top, but it will just say Court Forms Online. Yeah, I mean, not like I'm on the wrong page here. It won't say mass access anymore. But maybe we can publish interviews from other jurisdictions here too.
I think so.
So maybe we'll go back to having Massachusetts here. And well, that's looking too far ahead, but
You could also look at there's depending upon how we do it. So for example, like on the spot test drive, that like question box over there, like it also has like a location bit. So it'll ask your browser, do I know where you are? And if it knows where you are, it'll then just pick your jurisdiction.
sure.
So yeah, so I mean, just having some dynamic, but yeah, that the front page could just be entirely filtered based upon what we know about where you are, and then everything is, either filtered or not. So if you just click on the picture of the dogs there, that'll get you to where you. So that test drive there, scroll down. Yeah, so it'll ask
I
for
have to share my location to do that.
if you don't share your location, it actually prompts you to say. So it's saying, did it take place in Massachusetts? It's asking you to check that it's correct about where you are. If you hadn't given it your location data, it would have said, where is this taking place? So yeah, choose the location.
I think that's interesting. I think we could probably do
We
something
can do better.
location detection. Yeah.
Just
We could just use, if we have the IP address, we can do some stuff without necessarily having to ask for location, like fine grained location data. Unless I'm wrong about what some ethical rule there, but
Well, the nice thing is that the request for location data means that you can actually, one, I do like the opt-in nature.
Yeah.
And two, you're not relying upon a guess based upon IP address, which, I mean, I haven't looked at that in a while because everyone's moved to like the location-based data. My recollection from 15 years ago is that the
Okay.
IP-based data, the IP-based data can, you know, especially if you're at a border, can be, you know, fuzzy. But you know, if you're in Delaware, maybe that's a big problem because you're everywhere as a border.
let me see.
Also, if you spend any significant amount of time, like not at the state where you're getting the.
The key thing is to have a failover state that is, if we don't know where you are, we ask you where you are,
Yeah.
and we try to make a reasonable guess, whatever we decide a reasonable guess is. But
So
we
let
also
me
don't
see.
have to overthink it at this stage. At this stage,
No, for sure.
we only have Massachusetts forms that we're pulling from. So
Trying to think through like what would go on this index page. Sorry, yeah, you're right. I'm only thinking about the navigation bar when I said that, but you're right, it's too early to really make a decision there. We can change that later.
Yeah, I think the
If someone-
architecture we have is-
We have a lot of deep links here, but I don't know how many of those we've shared. But on the other hand, if we keep this housing slug, then that's fine, I think, right? People come here, they'll see the form. And we're okay with making this be a link from an index page to a real, what Caroline was calling the jump page, with the more information and the start form
yeah, I
link.
think so.
So we're going to go from 2 clicks to 3. But that's okay, because we can give better context and have
You also could make it so that it's, you know, you could still have the start form button, which would still just be 2 clicks. But you can, you know, more information or something could go to the jump page.
we could. So that's a question, I guess. Do we
So I
want to have a learn more link or a start form, or just one call to action? 2 calls to action would be a little confusing, but
I'm down for, 3 is not that many more clicks, and like honestly 3 is probably still a good number of clicks because the static site's going to be a bit faster for response time still, so they can click on that, and it's not like it's not like it's 3 clicks to start doing anything. You can start looking and reading through that page quickly when you first do 2 clicks, and it's just you have to do 1 more click to continue. But we have so many additional screens in the interview, it doesn't actually add that many clicks for like the whole process, in my
I
opinion.
imagine
So,
a lot of people will be getting directly to the jump page.
Yeah, I
That's
think-
what I was gonna say. I mean,
yeah,
these days you don't need to worry about too many clicks because people aren't usually starting on the home page.
Even if they were starting on the home page, if they use the search would go to the jump page.
Yeah, you say that, but do you know that across the country at legal information websites, something like 4% of users use the search?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying there's multiple ways to get to things.
Yeah, right. And we don't have to worry about too many clicks.
The point is, I like having all roads that lead to Rome because different people are going to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that the thing we've noticed on on Court Forms Online was that about 1/3 of people use the search, and then 2/3 use
That's a
the.
lot. Maybe it's the nature of the site that
I think it's because it's so big and prominent right up at the top.
we put, Illinois started off with just a search. You could not, it was really difficult to browse, years ago. But we've talked about different ways and places to put search. And I think maybe the difference is legal information websites have all kinds of information, whereas Court Forms Online it's basically just forms, right? So maybe that's the reason people are using your search.
I also think the framing is really important too, because I was looking at stuff for spot stuff in relationship to different places that have implemented spot, and the places that have just a single line text block not as much engagement as, an area text block.
Mhm.
Let's say look for a search. It's a different type of engagement than it is a tell me your problem.
Yeah,
So the context is. But to Quentin's immediate question, I think the 3 levels is fine, but not everyone's going to walk through all 3 levels.
right.
Come at it in different ways.
Mhm.
Right. Okay.
And
we'll need
having all
some.
those different ways is great because then we'll.
And the forms should also contain a lot of the, like, for example, the information about what you need to prepare before you start the form, stuff like that. It should tell.
Yeah.
And might also want to contain information about related forms and things. I don't know. Like, it feels like there's a lot of repeated content there, but
Yeah, you can see the list of all the metadata we were thinking of there, Michelle, if you want.
yeah.
Okay. All right. I think this is good direction. I'll probably. So there's some top level headings I don't know if we want to keep them, but maybe. Like we have domestic violence as a top level heading, safety of others, health, and other. Other was never a very good category for anybody.
Yeah.
Never a great category. I mean, those categories were just path dependent accidents based upon quick original
Yeah.
iteration. So,
And we have appeals as a top level category. What do we think about that?
well, that was important because we wanted to have all of our appeal stuff on one page.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think it's legitimate. That the other, I think we get rid of. I don't think that matters to anybody.
but also, I can't remember if the appeals court links. I think they link to that appeals page. I can't remember if they link to that or to the individual forms. But if they link to
Okay,
that,
so we need the appeals page, which is fine. Yeah, we could make that another topic. Doesn't have to map onto one of the taxonomy legal topics.
Do you, I mean, you've got stuff in other. Do you want to change other? Or do you want us put these forms in other categories? I mean, because really affidavit of indigency goes to almost every court, is in every
and
sense.
it's in all the other ones too. There are multiple parents.
All right, yeah, so you're just saying maybe don't have, these all belong somewhere else. They don't need to be in other as well.
I think they all can fit somewhere in the legal taxonomy. Like
Uh-huh.
these are not unicorn forms. They all
Right.
are ones that were looked at when
Yeah.
we come up with that. Okay, so I'll keep appealing a court's judgment. There's a list code for that. I'll keep that code. Because I can have top level ones mixed in. I don't think I'll make a top level one for domestic violence, or what do people think?
I would change it to abuse. That's one of the things that Jeff Wolf was working towards. I don't know whether the thing, but I think it's important to have it. I mean, because it should not necessarily be in.
Family is where
Family.
where it's.
Yeah, that's where
Okay.
the lawyers tend to do it, and
Okay,
we never
so I
did
can,
the oh my God, 258E. We never did that one, did we?
no, we never finished it, at least.
Yeah.
I feel like there are a few things once we have this, we'll be like, oh, it'll be easier to imagine updating it, which is silly because this is a huge project, but it feels like it's a little easier because I never really know I never felt that comfortable with the old process for updating it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's because I was the only one who did the process. So it's entirely valid.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, there's some, I think, like our guardianship stuff. I know there was some question about whether it would get the endorsement of the health law clinic, but I think it's met our MVP standard in some ways. Like there's some things like that. They're like, let's go through and see what. There's a form that we had a student work on last semester, which we didn't publish. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of in the wings that should be up there. That's not.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not the guardianship one. Maybe we have to still have a deeper conversation about it, but.
But it makes it does remove friction from the process. That makes it easier for us to see how to queue things up.
Yeah. Like we never put on Anna's project, for example,
Oh,
which
where-
we did make live, but there's no link to it anywhere. So,
Right.
and so
Exactly.
why is that? You know, it would be automatic if we had
Exactly.
this new method. So, all right. It took way too long, but we can obviously talk about this, keep talking about it more. I'm just going to
Oh,
keep it.
wow. It
till we
is
stop.
1:24. Crazy.
Sorry.
That's fine. This was productive. This was very productive. And everyone, we like talking about stuff during our casual Friday time about stuff anyways. That's all good. Bryce or Quentin, anything else?
No.
I think there have been really like blockers for this group. Has just been taking forever to do anything with the stuff. I did a bunch of updates to the server and then realized that there were changes in like the underlying Java server stuff that I was doing that are technically not breaking, but for the EFSP, essentially every single time I would like make a call to the efile proxy server. I had like efile.suffolklab.org and I did two slashes. Apparently that's always been ambiguous according to like the whatever RFC that have been accepted in the world. But like the server just sort of let that happen because it's not really ambiguous. File systems can handle 2 slashes in a row and most everything can. But updating to the new Java server, they were like, oh, we now flag for these things. And there was not an easy way to turn that off. And I tried for like a day to figure out if I could, and then just sort of gave up. And I'm now actively trying to get Matt to update. Like I have a fix, but it's just a matter of, okay, we have to get Aleo to update their servers and we have to update our stuff. So it's not doing this ambiguous slash, which just takes a lot longer than, okay, update the server in one place and it's done. But I'm just doing that and a lot of other related e-filing stuff.
Okay. I worked on Find My Site stuff, which this is the stand-up for that. So, yeah. All right then. Anything else folks have?